Okay, year seven. So you should have already watched the video about medieval towns. And the next thing you're going to do is look at this image and look really carefully because there's a lot happening in this picture. I want you to list all of the things you can see happening in this medieval town. There's so much going on that you're going to pause the video and give yourself a good 10 minutes to try and capture everything that you can see happening. And if you can add some words to your list about that would be words to describe what this place is like as well as just what's happening, then that would be fantastic. What I would recommend is you have a good look around the river, and particularly the river banks, what is happening there. Have a look around the church, and also make sure that you are looking at the streets between the houses. What is happening? There is so much going on in this town. So pause the video now, give yourself 10 minutes and make that list. Okay, so this lesson we're going to be understanding why medieval towns developed and what was life like in a medieval town. So you're going to copy down these bullet points here. So medieval towns tended to grow up at the following types of sites: by a river, by the sea, where two main roads crossed, by a castle, or by a monastery. Now, the reasons for this were that these are areas where you will get more people gathering. And the whole point of a town is that it is a place for trade. So in order for people to be buying and selling stuff, you need there to be lots of people coming through that area. Okay, pause the video if you haven't got those written down yet. So, across medieval England, there weren't a huge number of towns. Now, this map shows towns that had a population of over 2,000 people. To give that some perspective, Saltburn has a population of 6,000, so it would be considered an enormous town at this time, but obviously then it didn't have that many people. Village people came to towns to trade, and therefore those who were in charge of a town had to do what was needed to ensure that the town was safe. People want to know that they're coming to a town where their things aren't going to be stolen. Many towns had big fences around them, and the gates of these fences were locked at night to keep out undesirables. Cities like York and Canterbury had city walls that served the same purpose. So you can go to York and see the big walls all around York. If you haven't been, I would definitely, when things are a little bit more normal, recommend a trip to York. It's a beautiful city with some really, really interesting history. Towns were dirty places, though. There was no sewage system like we would know it today. Many people just threw their toilet waste out into the streets, so they'd do their business in a bucket and then chuck it into the streets. Rats were really common, and people would use pigs to eat any rubbish that they produced, because pigs will eat absolutely anything. So this extract says the streets were sometimes cobbled, sometimes covered with gravel, but more often were just a mud track and were always filthy. Household waste, sewage, leather parings, rotting vegetables, and any other rubbish was thrown into the gutter, and it ran down the centre. Here it accumulated in rotting, rat and germ-infested sinking heaps until violent rainstorms washed it away. So you can see in that picture some of the things that it's talking about. There's a man throwing his waste into the middle of the street. And the reason for this really is that people just did not understand how unhygienic this was and that this would cause things like disease. They also, because they didn't understand things like germs, their water was extremely polluted and dirty. People would not drink their water because actually what they would more likely drink would be beer or ale that they had produced, because it was less likely to contain all of those things that would make them ill. But they didn't know that. They just knew that drinking water made them ill and drinking beer didn't. So because the water was often polluted with toilet waste thrown out from villages, and people used this water for washing, disease was really common, and the life expectancy was not long. Houses were made from a wooden frame, so they're very, very basic houses. And they're quite easy to build and quite quick to build. And actually you can see in this picture on the bottom right what those houses would look like. And some of those houses still exist today. And most roofs were thatched as well, which means that they're built out of like a dried straw.